about to listen to Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, the podcast, where we speak our truth, show up anyway, and lead from the front. Follow me. Let's go.
All right. Messy as it may be, we are live with Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, the podcast. I'm JJ Hardy, the host. And before we get started, I have a great conversation ahead of us today with Terence here. But I want to tell everybody, there we go. The aspect ratio is a little bit different on here. Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. This is my story. It's my leadership story and the lessons I've learned from growing up in poverty, serving a career in the military, working out in the civilian world, and then starting my own business. So if this is something that interests you, go to Amazon.com, Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. All right. Well, Terrence, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. It's early where I'm at, but that's a good thing.
Yeah. I know you're not on the mainland over here, hanging out with the rest of us, and that's okay. You know, doing the military thing. You're still on active duty. So if you wouldn't mind, Terrence, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your leadership journey?
For sure. Yeah. So I'm in the Army. Been in next month will be 19 years officially. I'm a first sergeant. I'm a medic, and currently out here in Korea. I've been kind of all over the world, all over the Army, doing different things. That's one of the cool things about being a medic is, you know, they need us everywhere, and so been in all kinds of different environments. And over the years, I actually never really had a passion for medicine when I joined the military, but I'm colorblind, and so that limits the jobs that you're offered. And as I came up, I do love medicine. Helping people is an amazing thing. But I really started to fall in love with the leadership and kind of the operations management side of things. And as I've come up in the ranks and gotten more experience, I've had an opportunity to lead organizations up to 140 people and spearhead some kind of projects and things. And so now we're here. And I just recently finished my bachelor's degree in business. And as I went through and got closer to finishing that, I started realizing there's a lot of the frameworks that we use in the military and a lot of the leadership tools that we use that was reflected on that civilian side. And so as I started to look to my transition to retirement, I really started to grasp onto the idea of, I've got a skill set that I can use to really benefit organizations and individuals. And
looks like he lagged just a little bit. Oh, there you are.
Oh.
Okay.
All right, we're back. But yeah, that's kind of the quick snapshot of me and who I am and what I do.
Excellent. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the parallel between the way you use military leadership out in the civilian work and having those same qualities and different frameworks and stuff like that out in the civilian world, honestly, they are about exactly the same. And to be honest with you, a lot of it is just about buy-in. And so if you wouldn't mind going into a little bit of detail, what's some of the stuff that you think, in your opinion, I know you do your own show outside of this, you're wearing your hat and everything else. You're rocking your brand today. But if you wouldn't mind sharing some of what you think are some of the most important leadership qualities that you can use out in the civilian world, I'd love that fresh perspective. And then we can talk about a little bit of what I've noticed out in the civilian world, if you wouldn't mind.
For sure. Yeah. So I think one thing is you can start at the basics, right? So in the Army, we define leadership. And in the military, we're big on having very specific definitions of things. And, the perfect example is the definition of leadership, according to the Army, is to provide purpose, direction, and motivation while accomplishing the mission and improving the organization.
Yep.
I mean, if that doesn't give you a good framework up front of what you can do, no matter what organization you look for, you just replace accomplish the mission to, the job, the project, improve the organization, and everything else is locked in. And then what you can do is you can start to really look into the tools and the different skill sets that come along with how do I provide purpose versus direction versus motivation? And then what can I do to improve the organization, and what can I do to accomplish my specific goal or whatever my job set is on the civilian world? And so like it starts there, and then you can go on. This could go on for hours talking about the different similarities and some of the frameworks, but I think it's just a great place to start.
I'm glad you started off with the definition of leadership. Purpose, direction, and motivation. It's almost like if you can get the three of those things right, then you create the influence, which improves the organization. And so it's like a formula. And I talk about that quite a bit. I've actually done a couple workshops on that specifically, just taking that it's not the military definition of leadership, it's the Army definition of leadership.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure the regulation and everything else has changed since I served. But it 22-100 to whatever it is now. I can't remember hell, that was a long time ago. But just using that, if somebody understands their clear purpose, direction, if they understand what they're supposed to be doing every day, and then on top of that, if they're motivated to do it, which means 9 times out of 10 that you're treating them correctly and giving them the tools that they need to do the job, then you're going to have influence over that person, because they know they're taken care of. They know they know that, when push comes to shove, First Sergeant Colson has their back, or Terence in the civilian world has their back, and so when you really think about it that way, when you move from the military side and you have all this training under your belt, I have it too. I've been out a little bit longer, so I mean, I've worked in the civilian world a little bit, but I use that when I was talking to my teams, even in the civilian world, when I had the operational jobs out in the civilian world, and people I had really, really good teams. And the civilian world is funny, man, because you would show up and you're given a team, which is fine. That happens in the military too. But unlike the military, and you're going to find this interesting, because I'd like to hear your take on this. When you're given a team and you have people that have past, we'll say, indiscretions, they've gotten into a little bit of trouble, or maybe they got written up for a couple of things, or whatever the case may be, they're not used to somebody coming in and saying, I got it. I don't really care about anything else I don't really care about anything that's happened with that person before I showed up here.
Yep.
We're wiping their slate clean from here on out. Well, that's not the way the policy goes. And I'm like, well, I don't know the last leader. I don't know any of this. I don't know what kind of style that person had, if they were direct, if they were indirect, if they did the right thing and stepped far away and then only intervened when necessary, or maybe they micromanaged, or I don't know anything about the past leader. So I wanted to start fresh with my team, because I feel like that's the only way I'm going to get to know them. And if I think that these people are problem children going right into it, then, that's not the right way to start off in a leadership position. And they're like, well, I don't know if we can do that. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess then there's a lot less that I'm going to be telling you moving forward until I get my team right. And that totally pissed them off. But, when it comes to military leadership, that's the way you do it. We move around so much that you don't really care what indiscretions your team members have had in the past. They're starting off fresh because you are a new person, and if you feel like you're given the ability to make a difference, then you want to actually be given the opportunity to make a difference. And sometimes it starts off with each individual member of your team. So I'm just curious, what's your take on that? Because that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed.
Yeah, definitely. I think onboarding is something that from our side, onboarding, we don't really talk about it a ton as far as teaching people how to onboard. So when I come onto a team as a leader, there's the organizational and like the, hey, get spun up on the systems like you talked about, and here's the programming we use, and kind of here's our left and right limits and what we do operationally. But how do you onboard as a leader? And then how do you onboard people onto your team? So how do you get them to where you can say, look, this is our playbook. This is how I operate as a leader. And these are the things that I expect, and to do it in a clear way but to do it in a way where you give yourself some room to tailor to different individuals or different groups, kind of like you talked about. I've gotten people into the organization that have literally been sent to my organization because, oh, they're not a good fit here. I don't think they're doing that well, but we're going to send them to you because it's easier for us to just offload the problem than it is to solve it, which just grinds my gears, because 90% of these people show up and they're great at their job. They're great people, and they're just trying to figure their lives out. And whatever path they're on and whatever stage they're on, they just need a little bit of, sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's mentorship, sometimes it's specific direction, right? And there's the differences between those things. But a lot of it comes down to, I think, like your EQ and looking at kind of how you're reading people. But then on the flip side, when I come into an organization, I'm very much one of those people that says, and I'd imagine you kind of do the same thing. I'm going to take whatever the appropriate amount of time is. Usually it's a couple weeks, maybe up to 30 days of, I'm just going to see how things go here. And it's not just what's the schedule look like, and what are the key tasks that need to get done, or things like that. That's important. But it's also, how does the team work together? What are some friction points that I see as a flower on the wall, instead of, being in the mix with everybody else, and then trying to come in and say, this is what I've observed from you guys, and this is what I think you guys do great. And I think if we adjust some things in this area, we're going to be able to get closer to meeting our potential. And so let's tighten the gap in this area, or maybe we've got a gap in our swing. And then really quickly going from you guys to us and owning that team. But yeah, that onboarding process, whether it's people coming into your team or you coming onto a team, I think is huge. And I totally agree with you. There's so many times where either the team feels broken down, or there's like an outlier, and it's like, I've done exactly what you talked about. Cool. You did that there. You have a clean slate. Now, that doesn't mean you get to get away with stuff, and it doesn't mean that there's no standards. But what it does mean is we get to have a leader-follower relationship. And if that relationship goes well and you do your job, then I don't care what you did yesterday or a year ago. And we can be extremely successful. And a lot of times empowering people that way, and as long as you manage that correctly, you can help a lot of people get on that successful track.
Yes. And I think there's more to it than just that. I think a lot of times in the civilian world, in the military, we're brought up, so as soon as you're going to be in an NCO position, whether it's corporal or sergeant or whatever the case may be, they try to get you into school. They try to get you when I did it, it went from PLDC, and then switched over to WLC right when I went. And then and then it was, BNOC and so on and so forth, all the way up the line. But, we have a track in the Army, and that sets up the culture that we have. And I think that most organizations that you go into, whether it's Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, it doesn't really matter. They all have a track for leadership training, and it sets up the culture because they want all of us to kind of lead a certain way. Civilian organizations, they do a really, really bad job at that. And this is why I started my business years ago. And it's because when they take their high performers, those people that do a really, really good job, they offer them a promotion. And then they get the promotion and they say, I am so happy that you decided to go ahead and take this promotion. Here's your team. This is what I expect from you. Now let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, and I bet it's like, having it's a whole new skill set.
Yes.
That's one thing we talk about, and I think it's really easy to look at the difference in the medical field. Like, I could be the world's best and we have some people they've been in the Army for a long time or a short amount of time, and they are the world's best medics, right? Whether it's like in the special forces realm or just because of additional training. And they will look you in the eye and say, I want to be in charge of nobody because I don't like leading. I don't want to lead. I don't have the skill set to lead. And I've intentionally not honed that skill because I like medicine. And I think that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Being good at your job, But yeah, that's one thing as I look towards, for me, it's retirement and getting into the civilian sector is I've already kind of picked up as I've started looking towards job interviews and looking at some different things. And then also getting into the podcast and what value I can provide. It's that culture piece. You can tell when you look at somebody's profile on LinkedIn, like a company, or you look at their website, you can get an immediate vibe of kind of, one, is there even a culture, or is this just a place to go to work? And then two, you learn to really pick up quickly because we move around so often. You can really see, okay, what is the culture? And sometimes it feels almost intangible. But yeah, I think it's a really good point you bring up about the culture side and having the ability to bring that to your team and say, like, hey, maybe you guys do things well. Maybe we do our thing, but we're not cohesive, right? We're not coming together to accomplish a thing as a team, and we don't have our own culture. And I think you can start to set that with your climate, right? And we talk about how you build the climate in the short term, and then in the long term, that develops the culture. And so I think if leaders can come in and establish a climate that's healthy, but is also, I like to let people get a little uncomfortable sometimes. I think it's good as far as like pushing people's comfort zones with here's a little bigger project, or here's something maybe a little more technically down the rabbit hole than you're used to, because it grows people. And then giving people that task identity to empower them to do the thing that they need to do, so that they can start to almost feel uplifted and have a rewarding sense of accomplishment in their job. And then you can start to build that culture. And it only takes 18 months, I think, really to establish a strong culture, which is fast when you look at, the actual culture versus a climate or just kind of a work environment.
Yeah, and I think it can be done faster or slower than that as well. It just all depends on how engaged the leadership is, not just with you, but also how much support you have from your superiors, and then how much buy-in you can get from, if you're at a level similar to yourself, where you have other platoon sergeants, or we'll just call them maybe directors, with their down trace managers, and we'll call those guys the squad leaders. So I don't know if that's the way, because every company and organization works a little bit differently, even in the military, to be quite honest with you. So the job platoon sergeant doesn't always mean this exact same thing. But I would say that, being ready for your transition is something that so many people are not. So I'm glad you're taking an active role in that. I'd be curious to know, because this would be a great conversation to go into if you're willing. What is your biggest what's the one thing that keeps you up at night as you're getting ready for your transition here in the next couple of years, that you going out into the civilian world, as it is, because it's a different world. It really, really is in the military. I know it because I did it. What's that one thing that keeps you up at night? What's making you nervous?
Yeah. How do I get a job? So it's two things. It's how do I get a job, and what is networking?
How do you get a job, and what is networking?
But so getting a job becomes, in the military, you get a letter from the sky that says, congratulations, you've been selected for your next position. You're going to move to this city. We're going to set you up with a house, or at least money to buy a house. We're going to give you time to get situated, where you're going to get introduced to your new boss. They're already tracking you're coming. Everything's already set up for you. Have a good time. And then you get there and you kind of learn the new position. But like you said, it's pretty much the same thing, because we're all indoctrinated, and in each branch, they do the same thing.
Yep.
To go get a job. And I think that's why I've really started applying to jobs already, knowing that, because I'm a year out. And so the understanding is I'm not going to get callbacks most likely this far out. I'm not going to get a ton of interviews. And then even if I do, the chances of somebody saying, we'll wait a year for you to come onto the team is pretty slim. Which is okay to me, because it's more about the reps, because nobody's teaching me, and nobody teaches, you go through this transition course, right? You go through the TAP class, or the other branches might call it something else, but they teach you this is a resume, and this is kind of how you would write a resume in theory,
according to the Department
and
of
then
Labor.
they talk about exactly right. It's yeah, and then they do all these wave top classes, and I think we're leaps and bounds from where we were 15 years ago, right? But it's very wave top theory type stuff. It's not a workshop where it's like, hey, let's go on and see what we can do to get you exposure and figure out what you need to do in order to, like, having a tailored resume for every job application. Like, how do I even do that? What is a master resume? Those types of things. How do I effectively write a cover letter without it sounding like Chat GPT wrote it, or without just having Chat GPT write it, which then nowadays is super obvious. And then the other side of that is the networking piece. I've heard so many times, whether it's on social media posts or like from thought leaders, or people talking about the transition, people in the civilian sector, and they go, look, and you just got to get out with those recruiters. You got to network. You got to really, expose yourself to them now and really start to build those connections, because if you don't do it now, you don't have the rapport built when it's time to give the ask for a hire or an interview, or you're not top of mind when they start to get those positions. And my response is always like, okay, so is there like a recruiter headhunter luncheon every Thursday that I need to, like, where is this, where are these people, where do they exist that I'm supposed to interact with them? That nobody explains that. And so I'm trying to really work through that now, because I've got a job and a paycheck and I've got time. And it's been helpful to start now, because I can tell you 2 months ago, I was losing a lot of sleep. And, I was like, yeah, I can apply to jobs. Yes, I know I'm marketable, but I don't know how to really articulate it. I don't know, where to find jobs. I don't know how many jobs I'll have to apply to, or what the process is going to be like. And it really, really messed with my head, especially being successful for so many years, in just like walking in and handling business. But as I get more reps in, and that would be my advice to people, at least that are, a step or two behind me. And I have a lot more to learn as I continue my transition, but you just have to get out there and do it. It's like anything else we do in the military. And I think we downplay the fact that, like, when you need to learn a new skill, you just have to get reps in, whether it's something simple like working with a tactical vehicle and you're like, I haven't messed with this. Well, just mess with it. Just do it. And so I'm just kind of playing in the sandbox right now, and I'm applying to jobs that I want. I'm doing things that are within the realm, in case you accidentally catch a fish, right? Like, I don't want to have somebody offer an interview and I'm like, well, actually, I'm not interested in your. So I wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, doing the interview process or doing the job application process, just to get familiar with that. And then for the networking piece, I'm still kind of figuring it out. But I think those are the two big things that kept me up at night, and what I'm trying to do to navigate those.
Well, and then you're in the right lane. It seems like that's the common thread. And then after people transition, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm doing a study right now on this, and it seems like the most common thread after people get out is that once they get that job and they go into the civilian workforce, people don't understand their experience. So they'll talk about what they've done and stuff like that, and working in a job over in Saudi Arabia or in Iraq or in Afghanistan or Korea or whatever the case. People's eyes just start to glaze over, and then of course we have that ridiculously. Let me. How do I want to say this? Our personalities are a little bit dark and interesting, so that when people start trying to joke around with us, we either make or break a relationship almost immediately with our response. And I would say oftentimes I would break it and then have to fix it. So I mean, there are a lot of cultural things there, but I think you're focusing on the two important things, and navigating the job market. Honestly, they are right in telling you that you need to network first and then apply later, because oftentimes people don't really understand this, because if you serve a whole lifetime in the military like you did and like I did, when you get out, that $50,000 to $70,000 a base pay that you made in the military, if that's your target going into a job when you get out, you're actually taking a significant pay reduction because you're
Yep.
not including what you make in BAH, which is, for all the layman's out there, which I'm not saying you're lame or anything like that, but I would say that's the BAH is the housing allowance. The
Yep.
BAS is what they give you for sustenance. That's what the S stands for. And
Yep.
so when you start figuring out all this extra money that you get, you're
Yep.
actually making closer to a six-figure salary. And so people start
Yep.
applying for what they see in their base pay, and then they start making that, and they
It's
don't
not the
realize
same.
it's
Yep.
not you have to take your lifestyle has to significantly change.
For
And
sure.
so for those higher paying jobs, and everyone will tell you this that's had some success outside of the military, if your goal is to apply for a job and not start a business, which you're already doing a podcast, so you're doing the right thing there because you're showing your legitimacy and all that sort of stuff. But you got to get to know people, and then eventually people will say, well, I heard of a
Yep.
job, or I heard of a job, or I heard of a job, and it just keeps on going. You get passed around, and then
Yep.
making sure you're connecting with the right people. We can have a long drawn out conversation about that. But you're right, if they're not teaching that now in the transition program, what are they teaching? This is
Yep.
go get your premium LinkedIn account and make sure you use it. Oh, we'll help you take a great picture to put on your
Yep.
profile.
Yep. And that stuff
What
feels
the-
super helpful in the moment. That's the thing. Like on this side, you're like, man, they're hooking me up. I got this LinkedIn profile. I get the premium thing for a year. I get a headshot. They're telling me kind of what to put on my profile. And then you start to realize, like, it's 2025. I can go into Gemini or ChatGPT or any of these AIs and be like, this is my thing. You can upload a couple of your whatever for your resume, and you can say, hey, what do I need to put on my LinkedIn profile? And in 27 seconds, they'll do it for you. You don't have to go to a class for that's the easy part, right? It's like, but I think really getting into that, like, how do I actually network outside of setting up a LinkedIn? Like, what's the next step? And I agree. That's a whole nother conversation and down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing that would be helpful. And you can tell me if I'm off base or not. I think building resumes and applying for jobs, I've applied for probably 20 jobs so far, which in the big scheme of things, it's going to be hundreds, maybe 1,000 by the time I get to my transition. But if you're especially for the more senior people, but for anybody, I'm looking for six-figure jobs. And so one, there's a balance between, I was a first sergeant in the Army, so I deserve $250,000 a year. Like, we have to be realistic, but then at the same time, understanding where your skill set is actually valuable and then being able to articulate that. But for me, it's been training reps, right? And so when it comes time and like I'm in the window and I have somebody that's offered me or like has referred me to a job and I talk to a hiring manager, I want to be ready. I want to be able to sit down and I want to spend 20, 30 minutes locking in that resume and that cover letter, and I want to prepare for that interview. And if I have no reps in doing that and an opportunity drops in my lap, I want to be prepared to execute, right? And so that's where I think the job application thing comes in healthy and building those resumes. But it comes with that caveat of what I'm not recommending is going into it thinking you're going to land a job. And again, Amazon is going to say, we've got a $200,000 job. We'll wait a year and a half for you, or we'll wait 9 months for you because you're just that good. Because that's not the reality at all.
Oh, you know what the worst reality is about all of that? And I'm sure if you haven't already, this might hurt, but nobody gives a damn if you were a sergeant major or a first sergeant or a colonel. They don't care.
Nope.
They don't care. All they hear is you served in the military. Okay. Well, what can you do for our company? And so if you can't articulate that and you can't speak as a marketing person for yourself, then you have absolutely no leg up in anything. And actually what is good about all of what you're doing is that you're preparing, you're exercising that muscle, you're learning how to cater resumes to jobs and stuff like that, because the likelihood of you landing a job right now, as you said, is probably slim to none. But I would say that, oh man, networking is even more important. Going to those workshops, because there are tons of free LinkedIn workshops where you can go to start learning all of these skills before you get out. Or me and a few of my Army buddies here, we're going to be creating some of that stuff here pretty soon. And so we're working on a very specific program that can be added to the transition, and we hope to God it gets added to it, because we keep on hearing what you said over and over and over again, and we've all gotten jobs since we've gotten out. And so that I'm not going to say we cracked the code, but we understand what to do now, because nobody ever told us until we failed 1,000 times. We filled out 900 job applications and we had 899 emails that said you're not qualified for this position, or we've hired somebody else. So, I mean, there's a lot of networking, a lot of face-to-face conversations, and a lot of things that they don't tell you. And by the way, the networking on LinkedIn that makes you successful, who do you connect with? How many connection requests should I be sending out every day? You know, who's the most important person in that organization that I should be networking with to make sure that I can get that conversation that might lead to a job somewhere down the line? They're not teaching any of that stuff. And all they teach you is make sure you get that LinkedIn account. Make sure you come over here and get your professional picture taken. Here's how you build a resume, which is wrong. They tell you to cater it to the job description, but they don't. And you can use AI, but you got to train your AI, and they don't teach you that either, I'm sure.
And you can't rely on it, right? Because so many people just like think it'll puke out a resume and that's the product. They don't even review it, but going in there and saying, now I've got a framework that I've maybe expedited some of the workflow, but I still have to put in the work to make it my resume and my cover letter. Yeah.
Well, with AI, that could be a whole other conversation, because if you're not very specific and you go back and forth 50,000 times, you actually have to have a full-blown conversation like it's a real personal assistant before you get a product that is even worth downloading or saving to a Word document. But yes, I completely agree with you. And so I think this transition process, if people started a year out, they would be a lot better off. But the biggest problem that I see is that, and I hope that you're doing this and have done this, but the chain of command doesn't support the younger soldiers, even though they're supposed to say within 365 days of your transition, we're supposed to be giving you time to start working on all the things to get yourself ready for outside of the military. Oftentimes they say, well, while you're here, I understand you got to go do that, but we actually need you here. Oh, you were supposed to go to a transition program next week. What is it? You're 9 months out. Well, you know, you can set that up for a later day. We actually need you here. We need you on this training event. We need you to go to Korea. We need you to go here. We need you to go there. And so the chain of command really sets people up for failure sometimes, which if you have done it, it is what it is. But I mean, it's an Army model for that to happen. And I hope to goodness that your sergeant major in your chain of command, they're supporting you with what you're doing, and you're just not having to like slide under the radar and figure out how to do it without anybody else knowing that you're doing it.
I think sort of a thing. And I think it's getting a lot better. Again, like I remember it was, you know, you were going to these TAP classes 60 days before you got out, because it was exactly that. We got stuff to do. We got to go to the field. We have a deployment coming up, so you can't. We have to pack connexes, so you can't go to a TAP class or whatever it is. And so now we've gotten really good, and it's not every unit, right? That, like I always tell people that we forget the scale of the organization that you have to run. And so I could talk about my experience all day, and that is a 0.1% slice of the pie of what happens in the whole Army, right? But in my experience, we've gotten a lot better at supporting people. There's a weird dichotomy because we're trying to get people to re-enlist, right? We want people to stay in the military, but we also want to support their transition out of the military. And so that can be a little bit tough. But I know we have a metric that looks at how many people are eligible for TAP, and of those people, where are they in the process? And so they track that. And as you start to get closer to those ETS dates, those dates of them getting out of the military, you start to get a little bit of heat. Like they need to finish their TAP class. Now it's not quite to the point where it's ideal, like you said, where it's, listen, we really want you to be prepared for your transition. We want you to be successful so that you can go out and, be an ambassador of what the military gave you. And it's more of, you have to do this thing. So make sure that they do this thing. But it's happening a year out. It's happening 9 months out. There's a lot of, there's some big operations that happen and that'll delay some people. But for the most part, the culture has gotten better. I would say we're headed in the right direction. We're not there yet, but we're headed in the right direction, I think. And so that's pretty good. But for me,
go ahead.
Yeah, to your point, for me, like I'm a first sergeant. And so like at some point you get to a level of leadership where they go, we have no issue with you going to your TAP class, but that means nothing to me as far as your requirements. So you just got to figure it out. And so there's that balance of, hey, yes, I have a class next week. And I told my sergeant major, I said, look, this stuff's going to get done. But don't expect it before 5:00 because I'm going to be in class, and then it'll be in your inbox when you show up to work tomorrow. And we have that agreement, and he's very supportive of it, but he's like, we got an organization to run, and they pull the too important card at all levels for sure.
Yeah.
So,
oh man. After we're done talking live here, I might have a few other questions to ask you about this process and how it kind of goes now, especially from the senior leader level, because this is a really big thing that I'm excited. But anyway, so you are doing all the right things. You're setting yourself up for success. You're doing the networking. You're going live on other people's shows like you are here. And my show is growing, and I know a few other people that I can connect you with to get you on there. But what would you say to that lower enlisted person, because they're the ones that really have the hardest time navigating this, or even the E5 or E6, somebody that's not at the higher organization level that says, as long as you get me that crap, I don't care what you do during the day, because that's not a normal thing. I had the same stuff go on when I transitioned out of the military. What advice would you give to that transitioning service member that might be trying to navigate that dichotomy that you were talking about of, keeping up with the day-to-day tasks while also taking care of themselves in that last 12 months to get them ready to separate and go do stuff on the outside?
For sure. Yeah, I think what's tough is you don't have a lot of power at those lower levels to advocate for yourself. And so that's me being nice. You have no power to advocate for yourself. And so I spend a lot of time talking to those middle managers about this topic. And I've done that since before I started my transition. And I try to leverage it as, if you've got somebody who needs to go through the TAP process and the transition process, if you give them the time to do that, you're going to get the last 4 to 6 months worth of work out of them. It's going to be way better quality, and they're not going to check out as much. And so it's getting that buy-in kind of on both sides and helping those middle managers kind of figure it out. But for the soldiers, my biggest piece of advice is they go through the transition. I tell them, don't look at what you want to do in a year, because unless you have a very specific idea of the career that you want to go into and you know exactly what it takes to get into that career or what education, and you have a very specific plan, if you have that plan, you probably know it better than I do, so I don't want to step on those plans. But if you don't have that, I tell people to look 20 years out from today, right? Where do you want to be? And don't look at, I want to be this position at this company doing this specific job. But what do you want your life experience to be when it comes to your professional life? Do you want to work in the corporate sector? Do you want to work outdoors? Do you want to do something in like public service, or do you want to do something more white collar, blue collar, et cetera? And start to figure that sight picture out. Because if you look at that as, right, like, you can't help but bring in like Army analogy or military analogies, right? That's your 300-meter target, but it's fuzzy, right? And then as you start to get closer on the planning horizon, it should become more clear, and that'll help you figure out where you want to go, which will help you decide what track to take. Some people are like, I'm not going to college. And then you talk to them and it's like, man, you because of your financial situation, maybe you were going back and you can stay with family for a little while, or you're married and your spouse works or whatever. You can afford to go to college, and your chances of going the direction you want to go are going to rise exponentially by going to school. So just go to school, man. Use the GI Bill. And for other people, it's like, listen, I got a brother who works at this police department, and our dream has always been to be police officers together, and he can get me in. I'm like, don't go to college and get a degree unless that's a requirement for hire. Like you talked about, you got the networking. Excuse me. You've got the networking. You've got the in for the job. You know what it takes. Go do that thing. But so many people just, man, they get out and they have no real plan. And they think it's going to be like when they join the Army or the military, where they're like, I'm going to go talk to a recruiter, and they're going to tell me what jobs I qualify for, and then I'm going to pick one. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. So,
nope, you are literally swimming in a sea by yourself trying to figure things out.
Yep.
You literally have nobody but you, unless you find people out there that will help you through it. And there are plenty of organizations out there that will. I liked how you talked about that planning process. I don't think, even in the military, that's something that we don't teach our lowest level people, the privates, the specialists, the corporals, even, whatever. We don't teach them that very well. How to do that backwards planning thing, where you have that ultimate goal and you figure out everything that it takes to get you to that goal. And then you find that most actionable thing that you can do now. Yep. And do that. That's the easiest thing that you can teach somebody. But if you don't know how to do it, then you're just going to be flopping around on the sea of on the beach right outside the ocean.
Yep.
Looking for that water to get into. And, that's a horrible analogy. I don't even know if I did that very well, but
it's all right.
You're just going to be looking like that sick dolphin on the beach. But,
yeah,
that's something that a lot of people don't talk about.
Mm-mm.
I think I'm going to have to do one of my future podcasts on just that, because I think it's an important thing that a lot of organizational leaders out here in the civilian workforce, that they don't even understand very well.
Yep. Yeah. And I always stress, it's not about, it's not about the fine detail 20, 30 years down the road, but it helps you just pick a direction. Because again, you're in open waters. Where do I go from here? What do I do? Okay, well, let's stop. Where do you want to go? Well, I want to go to the UK. Okay, well, the UK is east. Look at the sun, figure out where east is, and just head east. As we get closer, we can figure out our heading. But like, if we just head that direction, we are headed in the right direction. And if you can start there, then as you get closer to those horizons, then you can narrow it down. But if you're not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere.
That's right. You can fail and course correct and do all kinds of things in the process, which is going to happen anyway, because you can make the best plan in the world, and when it's time to execute, the world of oh shit falls in your lap, and you never do anything right, it seems like.
Absolutely.
But the mission always gets done. So as long as you keep your eye on the prize and you keep moving east, in this analogy that you brought up, if you keep moving east, then eventually you'll get to the UK.
There it is.
I like that. That's good. Yeah. That's good. So thank you so much. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience here before we end the show?
Nothing in particular. I'll just plug the podcast. It's the Bold Leader Blueprint. It was the top-notch leader. We want to really hone in the audience and let them know what we're providing. So that's on Apple Podcasts, that's on Spotify, all that stuff. And then, I just really appreciate you talk about networking, but this is a prime example of, I think, for people out there, of exactly how networking works, right? Like, I literally was on LinkedIn. I was making connections, looking for people to kind of reach out to. And then it was, hey, you're going to go live. And so I jumped on and liked what you guys were talking about and going on. We interacted a little bit. And then from there, it's taking that next step and sending the DM or putting a comment on somebody's post and triggering an actual interaction from human to human. And I mean, look where it got us. We're on a podcast, and you graciously invited me on, and so I appreciate
Of
it.
course. I tell you what, you were the star of that show too. Remember that? We were going back and forth that day. That was fun. No, Chris
Yeah,
and I
was.
definitely appreciate audience interaction. And he was referring to, by the way, it's still Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, but I do every other Saturday, which we have this Saturday. I do an episode with Chris Pinkowski. He's a former leadership coach, and now he's a senior executive in the organization that he's working in. But we do a show every other Saturday at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, and that's coming up this Saturday if anybody is interested in that. And that's actually where I met Terence here the very first time, because he jumped on the show and started commenting on the stuff that we were discussing. So, and I appreciate you for doing that as well.
Absolutely.
So we'll conclude the show here, but let's not forget, go to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. That's my book, and it's the lessons learned through my crazy ass life. So, Terence, thanks again. And for everybody who's here now and listening in the future, don't forget to like wherever you're seeing this, subscribe wherever you're seeing this, especially if it's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is. But we really like some interaction here if you can. So please comment below and let us know what you think about the conversation. And hopefully, since this one was about transition, I'd like to get some insights from you. So just let me know what comments, bitches, moans, gripes, complaints you've had maybe on your transition, or if you're a civilian executive, how you've interacted with some of those soldiers who just had that fresh transition and you hired them into your company or worked with them at your company. That concludes it. Everybody, we'll see you next week. And Terence, have a good day.
Thanks.